My acceptance letter from one of the best engineering schools in the country was, according to my father, nothing more than a piece of trash. He calmly explained that my one and only job was to remain in our silent, suffocating house and dedicate my life to the care of my profoundly disabled younger brother. So that night, I put my life into a single duffel bag, slipped out the back door, and vanished. A decade later, a call came from their number, a fractured plea from the other side of the country, begging me to return and save them from the wreckage they had created. Growing up in our small working-class town in Pennsylvania, our house was not a home. It was a sterile, whisper-quiet infirmary. The air never smelled of baking cookies or a Sunday roast. It was a permanent, sharp mix of antiseptic wipes and latex gloves. Our lives didn't follow the cheerful rhythm of school years and summer vacations. We existed according to the metronomic pulse of heart monitors and the rigid, unforgiving timetable of medications for my brother Daniel. He was born with a catastrophic combination of genetic conditions that left him nonverbal and with almost no voluntary muscle control. Daniel was the silent, motionless center of our family's grim universe. My parents, especially my father, orbited him with a heavy, joyless sense of obligation, and I, Sarah, his older sister, was just another piece of medical equipment, a permanent fixture in the care plan. My childhood was a continuous lesson in sacrifice, a curriculum I was never allowed to opt out of. I have a vivid memory of being 9 years old, my nose pressed against the cold glass of the living room window. I was watching the neighborhood kids race their bikes down the cracked pavement, their laughter echoing in the humid summer evening. They were heading to the community pool, their colorful towels slung over their handlebars. I could almost taste the cherry slushies they would buy. But I was inside, meticulously cleaning the tubes and filters of Daniel's ventilator. My mother had collapsed into a heavy, grief-stricken sleep on the sofa, and my father, without taking his eyes off the local news, had informed me that this was my responsibility now. I didn't protest. I had learned long ago that my own life was the currency we used to pay for Daniel's. My dreams were treated as a dangerous extravagance, my friendships as a logistical problem. The world of birthday parties, movie nights, and school sports was a different country, one I could see on a map but was forbidden to visit. By the time I was a teenager, that silent acceptance had hardened into a tight, secret ball of fury in my chest. My father was a man chiseled from stone and silence, his communication limited to irritated sighs and terse orders. He saw my high grades and my knack for science not as something to be proud of, but as a dangerous distraction from what he called my real purpose. My mother had long since faded into a household specter, her personality worn away by the relentless grind of caregiving and sorrow. She drifted through rooms with a permanent expression of weary defeat. Anytime I dared to mention a future that extended beyond our town limits, a cold wall would rise between us. "Don't be foolish, Sarah," my father would say, his eyes fixed on the television. "Your duty is here. Daniel is your life's work." But hope can grow in the most desolate soil. My rebellion was a quiet, nocturnal one. Long after the rhythmic whoosh of Daniel's ventilator was the only sound in the house, I would slide my second-hand laptop out from under my mattress. The dim glow of the screen was my portal to another reality. I threw myself into free online university courses, studying subjects like advanced robotics and systems engineering. I checked out physics and calculus textbooks from the public library, hiding them in my backpack like contraband. I wasn't just learning, I was engineering my own escape. I was building a bridge to a different life, one line of code at a time. The day the thick acceptance packet from Carnegie Mellon University arrived, it felt like a supernatural event. For one dizzying minute, holding that official envelope, the stale, recycled air in our house seemed to hum with an impossible new energy. I had built a bridge from my prison in Pennsylvania to a world of innovation and possibility. All that was left was to find the courage to walk across it. I waited until dinner, my heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I laid the acceptance packet on the worn linoleum table next to my father's plate, a silent monument to thousands of secret hours. He picked it up with a look of profound irritation, as if I had handed him a bill he couldn't pay. He read the first few lines and his face didn't soften with pride. It hardened with a cold, rising fury. He didn't just put the letter down. He deliberately crumpled one corner before pushing it back towards me, a clear gesture of contempt. Carnegie Mellon, he said, his voice quiet but full of menace. What gives you the right to even think about that? Your place is here. You know his routines. You know what his signs mean. You're the only one who can calm him down. That is your job. That is your life. His words were like bricks, shattering the fragile structure of hope I had built. I turned to my mother, my eyes pleading for a single word of defense, a tiny flicker of support. She just stared at her own hands, twisting a paper napkin into a tight, shredded rope. Her silence was a deeper betrayal than his anger. The unspoken contract of our family was suddenly exposed. I wasn't their daughter. I was a long-term care solution, a piece of human infrastructure they couldn't afford to lose. That night, my small bedroom felt like the walls were closing in. I lay in the dark, my father's judgment echoing in my mind. That is your life. I saw the future he had planned for me, a long gray road of endless service, a slow grinding down of my soul until nothing of Sarah was left. My gaze fell on an old, faded duffel bag I kept in my closet for school trips I was never allowed to take. A wave of cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. They did not get to be the authors of my story. I would write it myself. I moved through the sleeping house with a stealth born of years of practice. I packed a few clothes, my laptop, the precious, slightly crumpled acceptance letter, and the $2,000 I had saved over 3 years of working a secret weekend job at a local diner. I left a short, simple note on the kitchen table. It wasn't an apology, it was a resignation. I have to have my own life. You left me no other way. As the sun rose, I was on a bus heading west, watching the familiar dreary landscape of my hometown disappear in the rearview mirror. That first year in Pittsburgh was a masterclass in desperation and survival. I was utterly alone in a city that felt vast and indifferent. For a while, I slept on a couch in another student's crowded apartment. Then, for a few miserable weeks, I made a bed out of piled-up coats in the back room of the university cafeteria, where I worked the dishwashing shift until 3 in the morning. I spent my days in the financial aid office, a constant, polite, but unyielding presence, telling my story of estrangement over and over until a kind-hearted administrator finally helped me file for independent student status. I applied for every scholarship, every grant, every work-study program the university offered. Bit by bit, I started to assemble a life. A critical needs scholarship came through, covering my tuition. I impressed a brilliant but demanding robotics professor who offered me a paid internship in her lab. I found a tiny attic room for rent in a house full of other students that I could just barely afford if I lived on instant noodles and free coffee from the lab. Each small victory felt monumental. For the first time, I was completely responsible for myself, a feeling that was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. I was finally free. The next few years passed in a whirlwind of algorithms, late-night coding sessions, and the pure joy of discovery. I graduated from Carnegie Mellon with highest honors. I heard my name called over the auditorium's sound system and walked across the stage to a wave of applause from strangers. I saw the 2 empty seats in the 3rd row where my family should have been, and I didn't feel a sting of sadness. I felt a powerful surge of defiance. I had done this, all of it. A groundbreaking robotics firm in the city, Synaptic Bridge Technologies, hired me right after graduation. My work became my passion. I led a team developing intuitive, non-invasive interfaces to help individuals with severe motor impairments interact with the world. I was designing the very systems that could have given my brother a voice, the kinds of creative solutions my parents had never had the imagination to seek. The deep, cutting irony of my career was a constant, quiet companion. I maintained a total, inviolable silence with my family. My only contact in 10 years was a single article I mailed them from a prestigious tech journal. It was a profile of my team with a large picture of me at a whiteboard, sketching out a complex neural interface. I circled my picture with a red pen. I didn't include a note or a return address. Then, 3 months ago, the past I had so carefully amputated from my life came crashing back. The phone rang, showing a Pennsylvania area code I didn't have saved. It was a hospital social worker. My father had suffered a series of debilitating strokes. He was alive, but bedridden and incoherent. My mother, left to manage everything, had suffered a complete mental breakdown and was now in a psychiatric ward, unable to care for herself, let alone anyone else. And Daniel, now a 30-year-old man, had been discovered by a concerned neighbor in a state of appalling neglect. The family's meager savings were gone. The house was in foreclosure. The social worker explained that the hospital, going through my father's old wallet, had found my name and a 10-year-old university ID. After a decade of being a non-person, I was now their only known relative. The daughter they had tried to chain to a wall was now their only lifeline. A pure, white, hot rage flared inside me. I thanked the woman and hung up. They had made their choices. They chose their path the day they dismissed my future as worthless. I owed them nothing. This was the bed they had made, but I could not get the image of Daniel out of my head. Daniel, trapped and alone in that decaying house. He was the silent victim in all of this, the epicenter of a tragedy he had no part in creating. My parents had failed me, yes, but their final failure was against him, and it was a failure so total, so catastrophic, that I could not turn my back on it. He was suffering because their world had imploded. I told my boss I had a serious family emergency. I packed a small suitcase and boarded a flight back to the one place on earth I had sworn I would never see again. The reality was 100 times worse than my darkest imaginings. The moment I forced open the front door, the smell hit me like a physical assault, a stomach-turning mixture of decay, sickness, and filth. The house I remembered as obsessively, unnaturally clean was now a biohazard, buried under a landslide of neglect. Rotting food sat on the counters. A greasy film coated every surface. In the living room, my father lay in a rented hospital bed. He was a shrunken, hollowed-out version of the man I remembered, but his eyes, when they met mine, still held a familiar spark of bitter resentment. He watched me enter, but he couldn't form words. My mother was not there. She was already gone, committed to the state facility. Then I went to Daniel's room. My heart didn't just ache. It felt like it cracked in my chest. He was on a thin, soiled mattress on the floor, his body rocking back and forth in a frantic, agitated rhythm. He was emaciated, his skin pale and clammy, his eyes wide with a profound animal terror I couldn't comprehend. This wasn't just neglect. This was total abandonment. He was a prisoner whose jailers had simply collapsed, leaving him to waste away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to unleash 10 years of repressed fury on the broken man in the other room. I wanted to demand how he could anchor my entire future to Daniel's care, only to let him rot the moment things got truly hard. But the anger was too immense for words, so I did the only thing I could. I walked to my brother, knelt on the filthy floor, and very, very gently, I laid my hand on his arm. He flinched, but then a small miracle happened. The frantic rocking slowed, and then it stopped. His head became still. His eyes, which had been darting around the room, finally settled on my face. For one breathtaking, crystalline second, I saw something in their depths. It wasn't recognition, not in the way we understand it. It was something more primal. It was connection, a flicker of the person who was still inside. That night, sitting on the edge of my old dusty bed, I knew with a certainty that settled into my bones that I could not leave him behind. This was no longer about my parents. This was about Daniel. It was about doing right by the one person whose life had been even more confined than my own, and in far more painful ways. The next morning, I made a call, not to a social worker, but to my old mentor from Carnegie Mellon, Dr. Evelyn Reed. She was a titan in the field who now ran a well-funded foundation dedicated to using technology to improve the lives of people with disabilities. I told her the whole story, the suffocating childhood, the escape, the career, and the horror I had walked back into. Dr. Reed listened without a single word of judgment. She didn't offer me useless platitudes about family or forgiveness. Her response was decisive and immediate. "I'm arranging a private medical transport, Sarah. My best clinical team will be at that house by tomorrow morning. We are getting him out of there." For the first time in my life, someone with real power looked at the whole ugly situation and simply said, "Let's fix this." While I waited, I focused all my energy on Daniel. I bathed him, dressed him in new soft clothes I bought at a nearby department store, and helped him into a wheelchair. I wheeled him out to the small, overgrown backyard and turned his face so he could feel the warmth of the sun. I played music for him on my phone, a playlist of old folk songs I remembered my mother humming before the sadness took her. And he began to respond. He would lean his head toward the sound. He reached out and let his hand rest on my wrist. He was still in there. He just needed someone to find him. My father was a silent witness to all of this. Trapped in his broken body, he finally managed to speak. "So," he rasped, his voice a grotesque echo of his old authority, "you're back, to show off, to put him away somewhere and be done with us for good." I didn't even look at him. My entire world at that moment was Daniel. When Dr. Reed's team arrived, it was like watching a special forces operation. They were kind, but incredibly efficient, assessing Daniel's condition and documenting everything. Within 2 days, using the foundation's legal team and considerable influence, they had secured a place for Daniel at the Meadowbrook Institute, one of the best residential care facilities in the nation. His entire stay, for as long as he needed, would be funded by a new grant Dr. Reed established on the spot, which she named the Daniel Project. Her lawyers helped me file for and win emergency guardianship, citing our father's medical state and our mother's incapacitation. The moment I signed the final document, a weight I had carried since childhood dissolved, I had taken control. I rode with Daniel in the transport van to the institute. It was nestled in the beautiful countryside of upstate New York and looked more like a calm college campus than a medical facility. The rooms were bright and filled with natural light, and the staff treated Daniel with a gentle dignity that brought tears to my eyes. They spoke to him, not at him. They explained everything they were doing. I stayed with him for the first 2 days, sleeping on a couch in his large, comfortable suite. In that short time, I saw him begin to emerge. He made eye contact with his physical therapist. He used a simple, pressure-sensitive pad to select yes when asked if he liked the music. And he smiled. While watching a nature documentary about birds, a real, genuine smile spread across his face. I was 30 years old, and it was the first time I had ever seen my brother truly smile. Before I left, I promised him I would visit every month and that we would video call 3 times a week. I was not abandoning him, but I was not martyring myself for him either. I had a life and a career of my own. With Daniel finally safe and in a place where he could not just exist but flourish, I could return to my own life, free from the guilt that had been my constant companion. I went back to the house in Pennsylvania one last time. It was now empty, the bank having taken possession. The hospital had moved my father to a state-run nursing home. I didn't go to see him. I didn't need to yell or have a final confrontation. The rage was gone, replaced by a deep, quiet peace. The battle was over, and I had won. Not against him, but for myself and for Daniel. He hadn't wanted a daughter. He had wanted a tool, a living, breathing piece of medical equipment that would never leave, never complain, and never have needs of its own. And when his world fell apart, he expected that tool to come back and put it all back together. But I was not a tool. I was a person. I walked out the front door, and for the second time in my life, I didn't look back. Returning to Pittsburgh felt different this time. It wasn't just my city of refuge anymore. It was my home, the one I had chosen and built. I went back to my work with a renewed sense of purpose. I pitched a new idea to my company's board, a nonprofit foundation funded by our company called the Anchor Initiative. Its mission is to provide scholarships, career counseling, and mental health support for young people who are acting as primary caregivers for family members. I wanted to give other kids who were in my old situation the one thing I never had, an option. 6 months have passed. Daniel is transforming. I get weekly video reports from his care team. He is learning to communicate with a sophisticated eye-tracking device that my own lab designed and built for him. His progress is astounding. Our monthly visits are the highlight of my life. We sit together, we listen to music, and he uses his device to tell me about his day. We have finally found a way to speak to each other. My mother, now in a quiet residential facility, sends me short, shaky letters about the weather, each line heavy with a regret she doesn't know how to voice. I write back. I haven't heard from my father, and I don't expect to. I am at peace with that. This journey was never about revenge or even about forgiveness. It was about liberation. I ran away to save myself from a life sentence, but I came back to lead a rescue. I didn't fix my broken family. I saved its most vulnerable member. I am no longer defined by that sterile house or the bleak future they designed for me. I broke their cycle of despair. I rescued my brother, not from the crushing weight of duty they tried to place on me, but from a place of love that was always my own. And in saving him, I finally truly saved myself.